Six o'clock in the morning, sports arena located in Ohio. No individual has yet wielded a racket, no sphere has rebounded, and no scoreboard has illuminated. An unexpected occurrence is already transpiring about the tickets. The ticketing system is unexpectedly operating behind the scenes. Contending with an unforeseen surge in demand occurring earlier than anticipated, a viral rally has not yet occurred, no huge upset. No point for the championship. What instigated it? Who is orchestrating this haste? And why does it feel like something much bigger than tennis is happening underneath the surface? Stay with me, because toward the finish of this video, you'll understand why a 21-year-old who has just soared to a career-high World No. 18 can make fans drive over different states simply for another chance to watch her step onto a tennis court. Let's set the scene appropriately. Because Cincinnati was never supposed to be an ordinary trip on the calendar. The Cincinnati Open is one of the most recognized championships in the sport, staged in the Lindner Family Tennis Center after a large redevelopment project of around $260 million. This is a venue constructed for the top stars in tennis. An event that has already established itself as one of the important stops on the road before the US Open. The organizers know what a big crowd looks like. They know how ticket demand behaves. They have years of data, years of experience, and a massive operation geared to accommodate thousands upon thousands of fans. And then Alex appeared on the schedule. Suddenly, the conversation around certain sessions wasn't simply about who will win the match, it was about whether there would be enough seats for everyone who wanted to be there. Demand around Alex was becoming impossible to ignore, and as more admirers tried to get tickets, prices began going rapidly upward. Seats that had initially looked reasonably reasonable were suddenly becoming considerably more pricey, while resale advertisements were soaring into the hundreds of dollars. And generally that's the point where demand starts to slow down. People look at the price, pause, and decide they'll watch from home instead. But something different was happening here. Fans were still buying. They weren't only paying to watch a tennis match. They were paying for the chance to be inside the building as Alex went onto the court. And that's where this story gets intriguing, because the main question isn't simply how much the tickets cost, it's who is willing to pay them. Look beyond the stadium for a moment. Look beyond Ohio. The folks showing up for Alex aren't coming from one area or even one city. They're dispersed across states, across countries, and across whole generations of Filipino families who have constructed lives far afield from where they started. For many of them, tennis wasn't necessarily the sport they grew up following. Some discovered Alex first, and tennis came thereafter. That distinction important, because when a player attracts people who weren't previously frequent tennis fans, you're no longer talking about conventional sports fans, you're talking about someone becoming a cultural connection. A teenage athlete thousands of miles away might suddenly make a stadium feel surprisingly familiar. The flags come out. The families come together. Friends who haven't seen one another in months or even years start planning plans. And suddenly a tennis tournament becomes the destination. Stories from Alex's fans make that even evident. Colin Saleo has reported some exceptional incidents of Filipino supporters traveling expressly to see her. One group of friends living in separate locations of the United States even converted their yearly reunion into a trip structured around Alex's timetable. They weren't meeting in the traditional vacation places. They were meeting where Alex was playing. And then there's another anecdote that demonstrates the level of dedication, better than practically any metric could. After witnessing Alex compete in Toronto, one fan apparently climbed back in his car and drove nearly 8 hours to Cincinnati for another chance to see her play. Think about that for a second. 8 hours on the road for another tennis match. Not because it was a Grand Slam final. Not because a renowned rivalry was taking place, since Alex was going to be there. And probably the most crucial thing is that Alex herself knows what the tickets symbolize. She has commented about the sacrifices Filipino fans make to support her, particularly those who are living and working distant from the Philippines. She realizes that for many families, money has a function. It goes toward rent, toward bills, toward relatives back home, toward children and parents, and everyday responsibilities. So when someone chooses to spend part of that money on a ticket to hear her play, She recognizes that it isn't merely another sale at a box office, there's a personal cost behind it. And that's why the atmosphere around her matches may feel so intense. The screaming isn't simply about a point one, the flags aren't just decoration, and the individuals standing in those seats aren't necessarily there because they suddenly become experts in tennis strategy. They're there because they recognize something familiar in Alex. They see someone representing a country, a culture, and a path that many of them understand intimately. And the rest of the tennis world has started noticing. Coco Gauff has noted the new demographic Alex is attracting to the sport. And that insight might be one of the most critical hints in this entire story. Because tennis has always had enthusiastic followers, what makes Alex exceptional is the quantity of individuals discovering the sport through her. They're not necessarily coming because they already adore tennis, they're coming because they love Alex, and once they step through those gates, they're introduced to the sport in an entirely other way. Cincinnati isn't the only place where this has happened. Go backward through the season and you start seeing the same pattern appear again and again. And Washington, the Filipino presence around Alex became impossible to miss. The atmosphere surrounding her matches grew louder, more emotional, and more distinctive with every round. When she reached the final, the crowd didn't feel like a neutral tennis audience. It felt like a communal rallying behind one of its OWNIN Toronto. The demand proved great enough that organizers moved one of Alex's bouts to a larger stadium court, allowing more fans to experience the occasion. And when those supporters arrived, the spectacle was undeniable. Philippine flags filling portions of the stands, people yelling her name, and an environment that felt utterly different from the quiet, constrained environment that people associate with professional tennis. Her opponents noticed it too. Jessica Pegula observed the environment surrounding Alex firsthand. In Washington, while Belinda Bencic also observed what happens when thousands of ardent Filipino fans turn up for one player. Little details, they're proof of things changing around Alex wherever she goes. And then Cincinnati adopts that pattern and pushes it even further. Because Cincinnati isn't merely another tournament, it's a huge WTA 1000 event with an enormous worldwide viewership. Considering the desire surrounding Alex is arriving before the match itself has even happened, that's what makes this narrative so fascinating. A player doesn't need to win the tournament to create an impact on the competition. Her economic and cultural worth can begin the instant her name appears on the schedule. Hotels benefit, eateries benefit, ticket demand changes. Media attention grows. Fans travel, families make plans, sponsors notice, tournament organizers notice. And suddenly, the question isn't just whether Alex can win another match, it's what happens to an entire happening when Alex is part of it. That's an entirely different kind of influence. Most young players spend years aiming to establish an audience large enough to move ticket sales. Alex is beginning to demonstrate that her audience can travel with her. And that may be the most crucial distinction of all. Her supporters aren't merely waiting for her to play in their hometown, they're willing to travel where she goes, they're crossing state lines. They're organizing reunions, they're getting into cars and driving for hours, they're turning tournament schedules, your vacation plans, and if you realize that, the ticket prices suddenly make more sense. The demand isn't being created by one match, it's being generated by an emotional connection that already existing before the match begins. So strip away the ticket charges, strip away the resale market, strip away the headlines and the crowded stands. What are you left with? You're left with distance, and distance is something millions of Filipino families understand. Leaving home, building a life somewhere else, working long hours, sending money back, missing birthdays, missing holidays, missing simple times with people you love, carrying your culture with you while adapting to an entirely other place, and then one day you see someone from your country standing on an international stage competing against some of the greatest personalities in the world. Suddenly that distance feels a little smaller. That's what Alex represents to many of these supporters. She offers them a reason to gather, a cause to wear the flag, a reason to yell when they might typically sit quietly. And maybe most significantly, a cause to feel connected to something they believed they had left thousands of miles behind. That's why the 8-hour drive matters, that's why the reunion matters, that's why individuals who never cared about tennis before are now memorizing the score, learning the standings, and arranging their weekends around a tournament schedule. They're not only becoming tennis fanatics, they're becoming part of a community created around Alex. And that community is growing. Every tournament provides it another chance to expand. Every city gains fresh supporters. Every deep run gives more people a reason to discover her tale. Every appearance gives another opportunity for those flags to rise in the stands. And that's why Cincinnati matters. Not because a ticket price got raised. Not because a resale listing achieved an unusual amount. And not because one match suddenly became the largest event in Ohio. Cincinnati matters because it provides us another peek at something that has been brewing for months. Alex Eala is becoming more than a tennis player to a growing range of individuals. She's become a motivation to reconnect, a cause to travel. A reason for families and friends to come together, reason for those who reside thousands of miles from the Philippines. Can feel for a few hours a little closer to home, and the most astounding aspect is that she has accomplished this before even reaching the top of the sport. She is 21 years old. She's already reached a career-high world number 18. She's competing against the best players in the world, and yet the story around her isn't only about rankings anymore. It's about what happens when she reaches a city. It's about the folks who suddenly start arranging excursions. It's about the flags that emerge in the crowd. It's about the supporters that refuse to allow distance stop them from being there. Oh, the next time you read a headline regarding Alex Eala garnering a big crowd, don't look at the number alone. Look at who is standing inside that crowd. Look at the families who traveled. Look at the pals who transformed a reunion into a tennis excursion. Look at the fan who drove 8 hours just for another match. Look at the people who found tennis because they discovered Alex first, because that's where the true story lies. This isn't merely about filling seats in Cincinnati. It's about a group spread across oceans, states, and generations discovering a common reason to assemble. One flag, one player, one court at a time. And whether Alex wins her next fight or loses it, that link doesn't disappear. When the scoreboard goes dark, if anything, everything we've seen thus far shows that it's only becoming started.